I would like to turn it over to Barbara Suarez-Galeano to talk about interpretations.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Barbara. I'll be one of the interpreters for today. So I'm going to give all the instructions for interpretation first in Spanish and then in English, and then I'll kick it over to our wonderful presenters today. Entonces, buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Bárbara. Soy una de las intérpretes que va a apoyar interpretando este taller en línea del inglés al español, junto con mi otra cointérprete, Carol. Queríamos reconocer primeramente en el espíritu de la justicia lingüística que aunque tenemos prácticas conscientes ahorita para tener inclusión del lenguaje, no todos los lenguajes están representados acá y el español y el inglés son idiomas que son colonizados. Entonces queríamos primeramente explicarles un poco de cómo acceder al equipo. Como pueden ver en su pantalla ahorita, si ustedes están en su computador, ahorita que prendamos el equipo que todavía no está prendido, van a ver la opción de interpretación en la esquina derecha de su pantalla, la esquina de abajo si está en su computadora. Si está en su celular va a haber 3 puntos que dicen más y ahí hace clic y ve interpretación de idiomas y puede elegir el español para escuchar esto en español. Por favor, nada más dejarles saber que si van a contribuir al espacio, por favor hablen una persona a la vez, un idioma a la vez y con pausa, por favor, para que nos podamos entender todos. Y si tiene algún problema con el equipo de interpretación, por favor, nos deja saber en el chat. So, thank you, everyone. My name is Barbara. Today, alongside with Carol, we'll be your interpreters for this webinar or this conversation. The first thing I'll name is that in the spirit of language justice, we want to recognize that Spanish and English are both colonized languages, and there's many languages that we have lost to the violence of imperialism and colonialism. For folks who want to access the interpretation equipment, once we turn it on, which will be briefly as soon as I'm done with this little spiel, you'll see interpretation option on the bottom right-hand corner with a little globe if you're joining from your computer, and it'll be 3 small dots. If you're joining from your phone, you'll then click language interpretation and then choose English or the language you want to hear this in. Just a reminder to please speak one at a time, to speak only in one language, and to please speak slowly and with pause, and to keep a lookout for the chat box in case you're speaking too quickly and we need to remind you, and also for other presenters to remind one another, please. And if you're having any issues with your chat function, with your interpretation function, please let us know in the chat. Now we'll turn on the interpretation function, and Carol and I will take it over from there. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Really appreciate your work. So welcome everybody. My name is Azadeh Shahshahani. I serve as Legal and Advocacy Director at Project South. Project South is a social justice organization based in Atlanta, and we work with grassroots organizations and Black immigrant and Muslim communities in the US South, and we're also in solidarity with Black and Indigenous communities in the Global South. Project South is a movement building and movement support organization, and we're also an abolitionist organization. So this discussion today will focus on exposing human rights violations at detention centers in Georgia and the United States. I would like to thank our co-sponsors, the University of Pennsylvania Carey Law School Transnational Legal Clinic, the Detention Watch Network, Georgia Detention Watch, the Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights, El Refugio, Casa Alterna, and South Georgia Immigrant Support Network. And the reason we're having this conversation today specifically is because this morning, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights held a hearing on the human rights situation of migrants and detention centers in the US. And the hearing came about as a result of the request submitted by Project South and the Penn Law Transnational Legal Clinic and the Detention Watch Network, and supported by many human rights organizations in the US. This was indeed a groundbreaking hearing. To have directly impacted migrants testify and to have the United States government have to answer for its human rights violations against migrants was truly momentous. Of particular note was an observation by commissioners of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights that the human rights violations inside Irvin and other detention centers against migrants amounted to torture. Today, we will hear from survivors and advocates who were able to testify, as well as other people directly impacted by the U.S. immigration detention system, as well as Congressman Hank Johnson and Congressman Adriano Espaillat. So to begin, I would like to turn it over to Wendy Dowe, who is a survivor. She was formerly detained at Irvin, and she spoke at the hearing this morning. So Wendy, please.
Hi, hello, good morning to everyone. My name is Wendy Dowe. I'm one of the survivors from Irwin County Detention Center. I went to the facility September 28th of 2018. When I entered Irwin County, the first look of the place is like I was in a horror movie. And after being there with the mess and the state of the place, and they housed 100 female with 2 bathrooms. One of the bathrooms never worked. I see pools like with maggots and all of that. After that, I was suffering from abdominal pain due to my stress and heavy bleeding, heavy cramps, and where I put on the tablet or a request form that I want to go to the nurse because I have pain in my stomach. And that's when they refer me to Dr. Amin. My first visit to Dr. Amin, he told me that I got multiple cysts in my stomach. The first day I went, I got a depot shot. Never explained anything about a depot shot. Never explained, he just told me that it would stop my bleeding. After that, I went back to him, I think on the second time when he told me that I have a mass in my ovary as big as a cantaloupe. After he told me that I have to have surgery. Went back to the facility, was woken up one morning, 5 a.m. by the guard saying that I have an outside doctor's appointment. After I went in the van, shackles from my arm, around my waist, around my feet. I went to the Irwin County Hospital. When I went there, because of I have hypertension, very bad hypertension, my vision was glassy. I have loss of vision. I couldn't see properly. I was weak. And they told me that they were going to perform surgery. I didn't remember anything after that when I wake up in Irwin County. When I wake up, I was in Irwin County, I noticed I was suffering from pain from the lower part of my stomach. So I had on a jumpsuit at the time. So when I placed my hand over my stomach, I noticed there were bandages. So I opened my thing and I put my hand, so I noticed that there were 3 bandages on my stomach. So after that, I started asking the nurse what went on, what happened, and they told me that they don't know. They have to get the documents from Dr. Handman before they can explain to me what happened. After returning to Charlie 2, the pod, I keep on requesting. After that, I fell sick. I couldn't walk. I was up on the upper stairs. I couldn't walk. I couldn't do anything, and no pain medicine. Constantly asking them for pain medicine. Never received any until I noticed that I have a high temperature. I was roasting with fever. So when I went into the restroom and I looked, I got my whole stomach was yellow, like it got infected from the wound that doctor had been giving me that surgery. So I sent another request and let them know that I had a high fever and I have infection. That's when they came and they gave me antibiotics and they gave me a pain medicine. After like several hours, I was in excruciating pain. I asked for more medicine and they told me that my medicine was expired. After speaking to a nurse about it, she told me that she found my prescription on the computer. So when they fill it, the 7 days was up. So I was still there suffering from all of that, the pain in my navel, like a cesarean cut, one on my side, and no help. I started speaking to ICE where I didn't get any type of help at all. So after that, they took me back to Dr. Admin. That's when they told me that I'm gonna have a surgery because I have mass in my ovary the size of a cantaloupe, and it's cancerous. So start crying, stressing out, calling family members and all of that. You know, when you hear about cancer, the only thing you can think of is death. And at the time, I have a 9-year-old disabled child. I have a 12-year-old at the time and a 15-year-old that I left outside with a friend. So after that, I start calling, stressing out. My hypertension wouldn't go down at all because based upon severe stress and all of that. So I started speaking to guards, and they told me, Miss Dowe, maybe you don't have no cancer. Don't believe Dr. Handman. Dr. Handman he's a liar. He performed surgery on several women, even women that got pregnant that he took their ovary out. So I need a second opinion. That's when I start requesting second opinion. I went to the nurse, I went to ICE, and the nurse told me that the second opinion, ICE would not pay for it. Hold on 1 minute, please. Yeah, they said ICE would not pay for a second opinion. Nurse called me and I was telling her, she said, why do I need a second opinion? I'm like, I need to know if I got cancer because I don't want to do a fully hysterectomy and there's no cancer in my ovary. So she started telling me the mass, it's got all this blood and it's pulling blood from me. That's why I'm so weak. That's why I'm so sick. So she started explaining all the things that happened to me is because of this mass in my ovary. I still told her I need a second opinion. I'm not going to do it. After that, ICE come to me, somebody from ICE come to me with a paper saying that they hear that I'm refusing medical help. I said, I'm not refusing no medical help. But based upon my first experience with Dr. Handman, I'm not going to have another surgery. And furthermore, this place is not suitable to have and lay animals there, much less human. So after that, now they start retaliating against me, don't want to give me no medical help because they claim that I'm refusing it. So they have me sign a refusal form saying that I'm refusing medical attention. So, okay, I signed the refusal form because I wasn't going to have surgery. Even after I signed that refusal form, they take me back to that Dr. Admin like twice, saying that I should have a hysterectomy. I keep telling them that I'm not going to have a hysterectomy. So after that, they start referring me to mental health, which is a psychiatric place. And I refused it several times too until nurse will call me back, tell me that my hypertension is going to kill me and my stress. And based upon what I'm going through, I need mental health. I listened to her and I went to mental health. After I went to mental health, they started asking me everything, what was going on. And I let them know this. They gave me some pills, which is I took the pills and it made me real sick. The first dose, it made me real sick. So I told them that I wasn't going to take anymore. So after that, I started calling, see if I could get outside help. People refer me to Family for Freedom, and I reach out to Project South, and then I spoke to this reporter and Mr. Donald Anthony. He started, telling me what to do and all of that. So I start calling 9116 number. I start calling Inspector General's number, where I noticed that they limit my call. Instead of I get 15 minutes, I would be on there like 2 minutes, so I can't get to explain anything. So after that, I noticed one day I was there and they called me and told me to pack my stuff. Their word was pack your ass up and get out. Don't ask no question. That's when they brought me to solitary confinement. After I went there, I was hyperventilating. I couldn't breathe because it's like a small room that you locked in. You barely see a hole that you can peep out of. So I was telling them I can't breathe. They still have me there for a whole day and a whole night. After that, they transferred me to the G unit, which is a trailer. That trailer don't consist of no tablets, limited phone time. I couldn't get in touch with anybody at all. So I started speaking out. I went to the warden. I talked to ICE, which is an ICE agent came and saw me by the name of Robin S. Brown, and she told me that You know, we don't care what you do. We don't care what you do or what you say. And me and her got into it. You know, I let her know, regardless, I'm an immigrant, I'm still a human. I'm somebody's daughter. I'm somebody's mother. I'm somebody's aunt. I'm a friend. I'm somebody. Not because I'm in the United States of America and I'm not a citizen of the state, it doesn't give them the right to treat me the way they're treating me. So after the fact, I was there during COVID, and then I started speaking out, still calling other people to see if I could. Priyanka came and saw me, and I gave her my report. I started speaking to Mr. Donald Anthony, and after that, that's when they transferred me to Louisiana. They take me from there because they realized that I'm speaking out and all of that. That's when I found out that doctors looked at my chart and found out that my fallopian tubes was out. And I fell in the bathroom one day doing at the time in G, because I was blacked out, and it's a small room. Because it's a trailer. So I slipped out of it and I fell and I hit the back of my head and my back. When I get up, I was in medical. So I asked, when I get up, the nurse said to me, she's trying to get someone to give her the authority to send me out to the hospital. And she couldn't find anybody. So I went back to the pod in excruciating pain. The next morning, they wheelchaired me down to medical. When I went down there, this nurse was telling me, you don't have no broken bones, so you're fine, go back to your pod. So after that, they deported me and sent me to Jamaica. My kids suffer from this. I have a 12-year-old child, and she's a disabled child. And I have a 15-year-old that was abused by several boys because of my incarceration. I've been in the US over a decade. Over a decade I've been there. And I love America, but I didn't know that this type of abuse would happen in America. And it's a nightmare for me. I'm right now, I'm going through depression, anxiety. Every time I think about it, I feel like I'm there. Or every time I think about my children, I remember the things that they're telling me, what they went through, hunger and all of that while I wasn't there. And, you know, the abuse that they went through. Now I'm here in Jamaica with a 12-year-old disabled child, and my kids are here. I have no way of supporting them because they're American citizens. I have no way of taking care of them, and they were born in the US. So I'm speaking out for this because I don't want to see another mother go through what I've been through. I don't want to see somebody else's child go through what mine's been through. I don't want to see another person, another human being go through what I've been through. So I'm asking if they could do something about it, change the system, see where they're placing people, what type of situation we're in. Every time they hear that somebody coming, they try to fix up, but it's not fixed because we're in there, we're suffering. We're not animals, but we're treated like animals. I feel like I didn't have no say-so over my body. I feel like I didn't have no say-so over my life. I wrote a will because I didn't know that I would come out alive. I didn't know I would be here today talking to you guys. Sometimes I feel like the impact that it brings on me right now, sometimes I feel like I'm still not gonna live. Sometimes I feel like my life is not too long because of what I'm going through. I have hypertension. I have this back problem. I still have the vision problem. I'm going through a lot with my kids and the stress and everything. So I'm asking you guys, you know, please to do something about it, and to you guys could just help me and my children or do something for them. They're citizens of the United States and they shouldn't be going through this. And that's all I have to say. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Thank you for your courage and stamina in the face of horrendous human rights violations. And Wendy was also courageous enough to testify this morning before the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, and her testimony was truly impactful. And the commissioners also noted that her courage and the courage of other directly impacted women survivors of medical abuse and forced sterilizations at the Irwin County Detention Center, was instrumental in really forcing the Department of Homeland Security to call for the Irwin County Detention Center to be shut down. There is a fundraiser to support Wendy and her family, and the link has been shared in the chat. So please check that out and please support Wendy and her family. Thank you very much. And I would like to now turn it over to two members of Congress who have joined us, Representative Hank Johnson and Representative Adriano Espaillat. Both of them were really instrumental in this fight to shut down Irwin. They came down to Irwin in the fall. They met with the women, they toured the facility, and they have been relentless in exposing the violations and in calling for Irwin to be shut down. They also, Representative Hank Johnson, along with Representative Rashida Tlaib, co-authored a letter to the Inter-American Commission to ask them to come to the detention centers in the US and visit them. Representative Espaillat also signed on to that letter. So we are immensely grateful for your support and for accepting the invitation to be with us today. And I would like to go ahead and turn it over to Congressman Hank Johnson to share your reflections with us. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Wendy Dowe, for your heart-wrenching story today. My heart goes out to you. I know that you are hurting, and I hope that you are getting the kind of grief support that you need at this time. Please don't bear this suffering by yourself. Please reach out, and if you're not already doing so, get the kind of grief help that you need in order to make it through this, because that was a very traumatic experience that you lived and that you shared with us. And so my heart and my prayers go out to you. And good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate you inviting me to join this important conversation today. And I'm proud to join Project South, an organization that does incredible work protecting the dignity of all communities and families in this country. I'm especially grateful for the recent work we've done to address the atrocities at the Irwin County Detention Center, ICDC. We joined in horror when the first whistleblower complaints of medical misconduct were reported at ICDC mid-September of 2020. Amidst the trauma of the global COVID-19 pandemic, where imprisoned and detained human beings were subjected to contracting COVID-19 and other dangerous conditions, and where the incarcerated were not guaranteed safety, we learned of further inhumane and barbaric actions taking place in Irwin County under the Trump administration. The dedication of Project South and their partners, and the courageous nurse who found the strength to bring these allegations of misconduct to light, ignited outrage across the country and indeed the world. Immediately, I asked the Georgia Bureau of Investigations to open an investigation into the complaint that medical professionals at ICDC violated the criminal laws of the state of Georgia by performing medical procedures on patients without their informed consent. And simultaneously, I requested the Georgia Composite Medical Board to open an investigation into Dr. Mahendra Amin and other medical professionals at ICDC who stand accused of violating medical ethics rules and subverting the fiduciary relationship between physician and patient. Shortly after, I joined my colleagues, including Representative Espaillat, in visiting the detention center. And what I encountered led me to call for the immediate closure of that facility. Not only did women share stories of the medical abuses they experienced, they also told us about other dangerous conditions that they are subjected to every day at ICDC. This detention center is managed by a private for-profit business, and the conditions at ICDC show a complete disregard for the human dignity of those people detained there. Many of them were given undergarments that were dirty and had holes in them. And because of a lack of masks in the facility, they were forced to wear the same masks for months and months without cleaning. Others had begun to create makeshift masks out of panties and socks. 2 months ago, I led a letter with my colleague, Representative Tlaib, to the National Archives and Records Administration, demanding that they preserve records of abuse at ICDC that were scheduled to be destroyed. Notably, just before the hearing today, we joined forces once again to urge the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights at the Organization of American States to open a comprehensive investigation into ICE, DHS, and the United States government. The scourge of eugenic medicine and non-consensual medical procedures has left deep scars in Georgia, where by the early 1960s, more than 3,000 people were legally sterilized without their consent. The allegations of horrific medical misconduct at the Irwin County Detention Center are a stark reminder of this history, proving that we have not shut the door on this appalling practice. The most basic human right is autonomy over one's own body. From America's founding, this right was stolen by slave owners. Today, it is stolen by the prison industrial complex and immigrant detention centers. A country where doctors perform unwanted and non-consensual procedures on men and women is not fair, it's not just, and it's not free. It is insufficient to discuss reform of a detention center when that facility attacked the liberty and violated the bodily autonomy of vulnerable detained women. The Irwin County Detention Center cannot be repaired, it must be closed. And I'm glad that DHS has announced that it will be shutting down this facility. However, we must, we must make sure that all the abuses and misconduct from ICDC are not transferred to the other detention centers in Georgia. And we must continue rigid oversight of the Stewart Detention Center and the Folkestone ICE Processing Center. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time today, and I look forward to continuing this discussion.
Thank you very much, Representative Hank Johnson, for your enormous support. We definitely truly appreciate it. I would like to turn it over to Representative Adriano Espaillat, if he's still with us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Representative Johnson, for hosting us over there in Georgia and accompanying us, leading the delegation to Irwin that revealed what we already knew, the kind of egregious behavior and the kind of violation of basic human rights that occurred there. And Wendy, thank you for your strength, your testimony, your courage to come forward. I concur with Congressman Hank Johnson. Please feel free to come forward and get the kinds of help that anybody that has gone through that kind of experience will need. But certainly, Irwin must stay shut down, and any other facility like Irwin must be shut down. In fact, I think we should object to any privately owned, profit-making facility that runs a detention center like this one's from getting a contract from the federal government. It is egregious that profit will go before the care of human beings. And so I'll be short because much has been said, but you have me on your corner and we must continue the work. Thank you so much and keep the faith.
Thank you very much, Representative Espaillat. Thank you so much for joining us and for your support in helping the movement to shut these places down. Thank you again. I would like to turn it over to Karina Jiménez, who is a sister of Jean Carlos Jiménez-Jospeh, who died at the Stewart Detention Center a few years ago. We are truly honored to have you with us, Karina. Please go ahead.
Hello, Asada. Hello, everyone. And thank you to Project South for having me today. My name is Karina Jiménez, and I'm the sister of Jean Carlos Jiménez-Jospeh, who should be walking the earth with us today. The testimony of Wendy is very touching and strikes a nerve with me because I can hear from her voice and understand the psychological trauma that she endured. It's something that I lived secondhand through the experience of my brother, who was a human being just like Wendy and who should be here with us today. He was a beautiful soul, a bright spirit, funny person, a dreamer in all sense of the word, including he was also a DACA holder, not to mention that he should have never been scooped by ICE and ended up where he ended up. My brother, Jean Carlo, died at Stewart Detention Center in 2017. He was also a victim of medical misconduct and systemic indifference to the basic human rights of detainees. He was the victim of psychological torture and ultimately suicide. He was confined to solitary confinement for 19 days, and he died a lonely death alone in his cell. He was had been diagnosed with schizophrenia, acute depression, and bipolar disorder, among other psychological issues and mental illnesses that he had. And this was a known fact by the detention center where he was detained for about 3 months and where he ultimately died. So I can speak on his experience. I don't want to take up a bunch of time, but as I said, he was in there for 19 days. Some of the conditions that led to his death were him being physically assaulted by a detainee there at the detention center, and us relatives trying to fight for him from the outside and trying to get some sort of official police report going. The system makes it incredibly difficult for relatives to assist their loved ones who are in detention center with these sort of things. And, from the very basic things like getting him money for his commissary needs, which he never got in 3 months that he was in there. And other things like just getting a D-28 to him so he can sign for him to get legal representation. And as Wendy mentioned, things like their phone calls and the time that they have to be on the phone, that gets tampered with as well in detention. And so for my brother, there were many blockades along the road that at every turn, it just seemed that the system was really just set up to keep him in there. And in fact, we know that that is the case. For 4 years, we've been litigating to try to shut down Stewart Detention Center in Lumpkin, Georgia. And as we've seen in the course of history, it is people, not only laws, that change systems. So I'm grateful for the work of Project South and El Refugio, also in organizations like the ones that are here present that do the social work so that we can try and change society as a whole and the way that they view immigrants, to try and humanize the individual, to try and push for these changes. It strikes me as particularly ironic that America prides itself in being a human rights champion of the world, yet for the love of profit, it allows atrocities to happen every day to innocent and defenseless immigrant lives. So to me, the way that I see America at this point in time, its greed is bigger than its heart and its sense of responsibility to preserve human dignity and to uphold its very own constitutional principle that, quote unquote, we hold these truths to be self-evident, right? That all men are equal, created equal by God. And, you know, it says in there that the rights are the right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And unfortunately, people like my brother, human beings like my brother, have been robbed of that pursuit of happiness, have been robbed of their life and their liberty. So, you know, like I said, many things happened to my brother in detention, and the records are public. If anyone wants to learn more about his experience, they can see it for themselves. But everything from having asked multiple times for an increase in the dosage of his medication and being denied that, you know, to multiple times letting the judge and guards and the whole staff know that he wanted to take his life, and his cries and his pleas for help being ignored. It's just something that should not be allowed to happen here in the United States of America. And as a relative, I have been impacted by what happened to him. I'm someone who has been able to overcome PTSD and depression myself. And my family and I, the work that we do after what happened to my brother, we do it so that no other relative and no other family has to suffer and go through what we've been through. But ultimately, really, so that no other human being in the United States of America who is seeking to have a better life, seeking to retain their liberty and pursue happiness, so that they don't have to go through what Jean, my brother, went through, what Wendy has been through. So my heart goes out to Wendy and to anyone else having to endure this injustice here in the United States. And we just really fight for and hope that things like what happened this morning, the groundbreaking hearing at the American Human Rights Organization, that these things serve to really help to shut down what I refer to as these hellholes and these ultimately places that ultimately become people's graveyards. That not only, you know, we can ban solitary confinement across the board, but also shut down these places for good. Thank you for letting me share today.
Thank you very much, Karina, and thank you for the honor of joining us and sharing your words. And we wish you and your family continue the strength. Thank you. I would like to ask Brenda Ramirez to share a few words with us. Brenda is also a survivor. She was detained at the Irwin County Detention Center.
Bueno, buenas tardes y gracias, ¿verdad?, por permitirnos por medio de este medio platicar y decirles un poco acerca de lo vivido en ese lugar. Pues, ¿qué les puedo decir? Fue algo muy difícil porque uno está en este país y uno pues sabe supuestamente que este país es uno de los mejores países del mundo porque siempre protegen al humano, pero lo que yo viví en ese lugar para mí es algo antihumano porque es algo que aún no he podido superar. Según yo, pensando que a lo mejor en ese lugar no iba a tener esa experiencia tan terrible que tuve, pero la verdad no se lo deseo a nadie. Estuve 2 meses detenida y sin ninguna razón me metieron a la celda de castigo. Tardé 3 días sin comer. Solo bebía el agua del zinc. Y cuando uno les pedía de tomar, decían que no había, que tomáramos las del zinc, porque como quiera, la que ellos traían en el bote, decían que era la misma, del chorro. Y que tomáramos. Y cada que les pedíamos de comer, ellos decían que nos esperáramos, que nosotros no teníamos derechos. Y si nos llevaban comida, era una comida arruinada, descompuesta, no daban ganas de comer, no la tiraban. Y las señoras que atendían, que eran, según las oficiales, eran muy enojadas y también nos gritaban y decían que éramos unas cucarachas, que por qué, que qué hacíamos en este país. Fue una pesadilla muy terrible. Después de esos días que yo viví ahí en esa cárcel de aislamiento, me pasaron a donde ya estaban todas las personas, ya podíamos platicar, podíamos conversar. Pero lo que yo fui a vivir ahí fue algo bien duro, fue un trauma tremendo, porque fui a encontrar mujeres operadas con materia en las heridas, sin medicina, llorando, y no había atención. Y si les regalaban una pastilla, se las daban y las obligaban a tomarse la pastilla frente al médico. No era decisión si usted se la quería tomar. No, ellos se obligaban a la persona que se la tenía que tragar justamente ahí. Y no sabían qué era lo que se estaban tomando. Y todas las que bebían esa medicina se sentían mareadas. Yo perdí 25 libras por no comer. Ellos lo tratan a uno como ellos quieren. Estando ahí, una muchacha se empezó a sentir mal. Le sacaron 6 dientes en un solo día. Esa mujer se estaba casi desmayando. No le dieron medicina. Y cada que ella pedía, decía, no hay, espérate. Para ellos atender a una persona no era importante. Nadie era importante. Ese lugar ni a un animal se le recomienda. Es injusto que un animal esté metido en una condición de esas. El agua con la que nos bañábamos era un agua hirviendo. Yo perdí casi mi cabello. No nos podíamos bañar, no habían cortinas. Allí se tenía que ver uno con otro. No había nada. Pero cuando el Congreso llegó, andaban como locos, poniendo cortinas para todos lados, arreglando, pintando. Le tenían miedo al gobierno. Como dice Wendy, a ellos les interesa el dinero, la ganancia, no cuidar al humano. El humano ya no es importante hoy. Es el dinero el que está haciendo la diferencia con la humanidad. Todo lo que mis hijos sufrieron. Tengo 4 hijos, 3 ciudadanos, un residente. Sufrieron traumas. Yo tengo este trauma. No puedo ni dormir a veces de ponerme a pensar todo lo que fui a vivir a ese lugar. Son cosas muy terribles. Son marcas que le quedan a uno y no quiere uno que nadie, ningún humano vuelva a vivir eso. Es terrible, lo tratan a uno como que uno hubiera matado a alguien, como que uno fuera un criminal. Pienso que ni a un criminal se le trataría así. Todo lo que le dan de comer a uno es raro que esté bueno, bien raro. Yo les pido, por favor, si ese lugar ha sido cerrado, que no lo vuelvan a abrir, que por misericordia al humano, ese lugar quede cerrado por completo. No sé qué más contarles, qué más decirles, pero todo lo que se vivió en ese lugar fue terrible. Había mujeres que ya llevaban 8 meses, 10 meses para poder recibir una corte. ¡Qué injusticia! Ellas tienen hijos, son madres, son tías, son hermanas, son hijas, son humanas. Y no podían darles una sola corte. Ahí estaban más de 10 meses, sufriendo con alta presión, con baja presión, con azúcar. A ellos nunca les importó. A ellos no les importa la salud del humano. Por favor, con todo el amor de mi corazón les pido que apoyen a la humanidad, a los que tienen esa fuerza, ese derecho, ese poder de poder cerrar lugares así. Se los pedimos con todo el amor de nuestros corazones, que cierren ese lugar y que nunca más lo vuelvan a abrir, y que todos esos lugares no sean antihumanos, que sean buenos, que sean lugares que no dejen marcada la vida de un humano. Es todo lo que les puedo decir. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Brenda. Muchas gracias. I'm very sorry about the experience that you had and the human rights violations that you and others have suffered. And I'm really hoping that together, fighting together, we can continue to shut these places down and also push for a measure of redress and reparations. You know, one of the things that commissioners mentioned at the hearing this morning is that there's a real need for reparations for survivors of human rights violations at these immigration detention centers in the US. So thank you very much for sharing your testimony. I would like to turn it over to Professor Sarah Pallotti from the Penn Law Transnational Legal Clinic, and who has been a really instrumental partner with Project South for the past few years in terms of bringing the human rights violations at these detention centers to the attention of the United Nations, as well as the Inter-American Commission. So Sarah, if you could share your reflections from the hearing this morning with us.
Sure. Thank you, Azadeh. And I want to give a special thanks to Wendy for her participation this morning in this roundtable now, but for her participation in the hearing this morning before the commission, which really had a tremendous impact on the commissioners, and I'll note also had an impact on the representatives from the U.S. government who were there. I want to thank Brenda Ramirez for your testimony today and for joining us, and Karina Jiménez for participating as well. I think it's important for us to remember when we're talking about these cases, we often talk about sort of fundamental human rights, and what often gets left out of that discussion is the right to family and right to be free from interference in family life. And there's so many ways in which the system of immigrant detention interferes with the right to family. And so when we're talking about separation, and Brenda, as you talked about separation from children and family members, and as Karina has testified, the ultimate separation from loved ones and family members that happens when people die in detention. And so just very briefly, this morning, we've been asking the commission for a hearing for many years, and I think they saw an opportunity this morning with the Biden administration to actually engage in a dialogue with the US government around the rights violations that we have seen. And we started the hearing this morning by reminding the commission that the abuses that we're talking about in immigration detention are not new. They are not abuses that came about solely under the Trump administration, that this is about a system of immigrant detention. It's been over a decade that we have been going before the commission, raising issues of rights violations. In 2011, the commission issued a report on immigrant detention, due process and detention violations. And today, though, we did get recognition, as Azadeh mentioned, from two of the commissioners, that what is going on behind the barbed wire fences of detention centers in Georgia and across the country is torture, cruel and inhuman and degrading treatment. And with that comes the right to reparations. And there's also a recognition by the commissioners that when we're talking about human migration, when we're talking about human mobility, we should not be talking about detention. That detention is a criminalization of migration, and that we should not be talking about detaining immigrants at all. And we need to move past talking about detention standards. We need to talk past oversight and investigation, which, while critical and essential to ensuring accountability and access to justice, is not the end of the discussion. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. I want to thank Project South for bringing us on board as a partner in this work, and really my heartfelt gratitude for the bravery and courage of Brenda, Wendy, and Karina as well for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I would like to invite Ceterakandahari, who is Director of Advocacy at the Detention Watch Network, to share with us her reflections from this morning. And Cetera also testified at the hearing.
Thanks, Azadeh. And yes, I also want to express my gratitude to Brenda and Karina and Wendy for being here with us today and sharing your experiences. I feel like I can't, there's not much more I can say to give texture to what they shared. Their experiences are so important. What I do want to say, important to share, what I do want to say is that, you know, I guess a couple things. One is to pick up on Sarah's last point there about the immigration detention system and sort of where we go from here, and where we go is that it needs to be dismantled, right? One thing that came out from the government side as they were answering some questions towards the end of the hearing was that, you know, they were answering the question of sort of what steps are they taking to dismantle the system? And the response was, well, we're taking steps to have a more welcoming immigration policy, but of course, sometimes, you know, detention is appropriate because certain people crossing have health concerns or other issues that require detention, which is, I mean, it's a laughable statement. It's, you know, I was a little bit shocked that she said that. I mean, our whole, the whole purpose of the hearing was to share how negligent and inaccessible and abusive the medical care in detention was. So it was shocking. And I think this is something you often hear, is that detention is needed for processing at the border. And it's simply not true. You don't need detention for processing. Detention is not housing. Detention is not medical care. Detention is, it's detention. It's carceral, it's jail, and it is not needed. And so I think for me, just in terms of what I was thinking walking away from the hearing this morning was that we really need to, I think at times, sit more in our moral authority about detention, right? I mean, I think we can make all the human rights arguments, you know, in the legal context, but at the end of the day, it is immoral to put people in detention and treat them that way, no matter how you look at it. So I think, you know, I'm going to leave it there. I have a lot of thoughts that I could share, but I just think that that we need to take that moral authority and push them on it, because sometimes those arguments go past them and they can't, because that's what it is at the end of the day. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Thank you, Cetera. Thank you very much. And I would like to turn it over to Priyanka Bot, a staff attorney at Project South and also lead author of the September 2020 complaint that brought human rights violations at the Irwin County Detention Center to the attention of the world.
Thank you. Like everyone else, I want to start off by thanking Wendy, Karina, and Brenda. And in terms of today's hearing, it was so powerful, and Wendy was so incredibly powerful in her testimony today. The fact that many commissioners talked about the need to dismantle the detention system and the need for reparations for everyone who has suffered in immigrant detention speaks volumes. I believe one commissioner said that detention system is a criminal approach to human mobility. And another said, we are talking about torture. I couldn't agree more. And the fact that ICE was not even there to face their human rights violations was cowardly and emblematic of their history of abusing immigrants with impunity. It was interesting that the Civil Rights and Civil Liberties officer representing the government talked about everything the Biden administration has done to make immigration more orderly and humane. I believe she said they wanted to make things more equitable and to combat racism. Well, the only way to do that is to dismantle detention altogether. There is no amount of reform or oversight that can make an inherently racist, inherently xenophobic system of immigrant detention more humane. She mentioned that her office actually receives many complaints from detained immigrants across the country, and half of them were about medical neglect in immigration detention centers. She mentioned that her office actually conducted an investigation into Irwin all the way back in 2016, and that they gave ICE suggestions that they agreed on implementing. It's clear that those suggestions were not enough because we continued to see human rights abuses at Irwin, including what Wendy talked about, the forced gynecological procedures on immigrant women without their consent. So no, like already mentioned, oversight alone is not a solution to detention. She also mentioned the Biden administration has implemented clinical changes to assure that the CDC guidelines are being followed. However, we know for a fact that things have not changed at detention centers in Georgia and across the country. At Irwin, we know that immigrants are still not being tested for COVID-19 when they're symptomatic. We know that they're not being quarantined properly. And at Stewart, we're hearing the same thing. In fact, 733 people detained at Stewart had COVID-19 at some point, and 4 men have died from COVID-19 related issues at Stewart in the last year alone. So I want to reiterate that the only way to make immigration more humane, like the government today mentioned they wanted to, is to end detention altogether and to pay reparations for all those who suffered. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate everybody for joining us today. The fight has just begun in terms of shutting these places down, so please stay in touch. Our organizations are on social media, so that's one way of staying in touch with us, kind of staying on top of the developments. We'll be sure to share the recommendations from the Inter-American Commission once they come out. The letter that Representative Tlaib and Representative Hank Johnson jointly authored and was signed by several other members of Congress that was sent to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, that is on Twitter already. It's been shared on the Project South Twitter page. So please look that up and keep up the fight until everybody's free. Thank you so much again for joining us and look forward to staying in touch. Thank you. Bye-bye.